Classical ciphers have been around as long as human history, and hackers have spent all that time finding ways to exploit any gap they could find. When people first started using simple substitution ciphers, hackers immediately tried to reverse engineer them by analyzing differences in letter frequency. The Caesar cipher is a classic example, where each letter of the alphabet is shifted by a fixed number of positions. Hackers found that the letter that appeared most often in a text was probably E, allowing them to deduce how the substitution worked. It only took that one clue for the Caesar cipher to collapse. Moving into the Middle Ages, more complex polyalphabetic ciphers like the Vigenère cipher emerged. Hackers used the Kościuszki examination to spot repeated patterns and estimate the key length, then used frequency analysis again to crack it. Despite its nickname as indecipherable, the Vigenère cipher also succumbed to hacker efforts. The German Enigma machine, used during World War II, is a prime example. Germany believed Enigma was absolutely secure, but Allied cryptanalysts thought otherwise. At Bletchley Park, Alan Turing and his colleagues built the bomb machine to systematically test Enigma's rotor settings. They targeted mechanical flaws by exploiting repeated message headers and operational mistakes. Ultimately, Enigma also fell into the hands of codebreakers, influencing the outcome of the war. This event reinforced the principle that even if cipher theory is strong, weak operational practices can lead to a breakthrough. After the war, the computer age arrived, and hackers turned their attention to digital ciphers rather than mechanical ones. In the mid-70s, revolutionary algorithms like RSA made their debut as part of the public key cryptography movement. People claimed that RSA was secure because factoring large numbers was difficult, yet hackers realized that if the key was too short, the system could still be broken. Indeed, in the 80s and 90s, 256-bit and 512-bit RSA keys were factored, drawing attention to the key length issue and motivating corporations and government agencies to switch to 1024-bit or even 2048-bit keys. But hackers also knew that key length was not the entire story. Flaws in random number generation or certificate infrastructures could be just as devastating. At this point, side-channel attacks also advanced quickly. By measuring timing discrepancies, for example, they could infer a key based on the time taken for encryption or decryption. Power analysis, or differential power analysis, allowed them to observe hardware power consumption, extracting bits of a private key one at a time. Such techniques appealed greatly to hackers because they made it possible to steal the actual key without grappling with large-scale factorization. At the same time, hackers began paying serious attention to random number generation failures. Around 2012, an error in Debian OpenSSL led to duplicate prime factors being used across various Internet RSA keys. Hackers employed a simple greatest common divisor approach to identify shared prime factors among multiple public keys. Many RSA keys were swiftly compromised, illustrating that if random numbers are predictable, a cipher can collapse on its own. Hackers also worked hard on man-in-the-middle, or MITM, attacks. If they intercepted the key exchange procedure in protocols like TLS or SSL, they could force a downgrade or insert a fake key. Once successful, hackers could decrypt or alter data in real time, effectively neutralizing the encryption. From the user's perspective, it seemed as though the cipher itself had failed, even though it was actually the key exchange mechanism that had been compromised. Still, the outcome remained the same. The encryption was nullified, so hackers considered it a win. Hackers often exploited vulnerabilities in SSL TLS libraries as well. Heartbleed, disclosed in 2014, was a flaw in OpenSSL that leaked data from memory, including private RSA keys. By exploiting it, hackers could examine server memory, leading to real-world security breaches. In other words, no matter how mathematically secure a cipher might be, once a single implementation bug is discovered, it quickly becomes worthless in practice. CPU vulnerabilities, like Meltdown and Spectre, also caught hackers' attention. By analyzing data leaks in processor caches or branch prediction, they tried to extract key details during encryption operations. Though still in the research phase, these types of attacks could cause enormous security problems if hackers learned how to deploy them effectively. Looking back, it's clear that hackers often target the operational environment rather than the core mathematics. Even Enigma, touted as perfect machinery, was undone by repeated message structures and human mistakes. The same is true for RSA or ECC. When factoring is prohibitively difficult, hackers simply shift to other routes, such as attacking random numbers, padding schemes, hardware certificates, or side channels, because these are far more efficient. They never give up on these methods. Wireless protocols like WEP and WPA for Wi-Fi have also fallen victim to hackers. WEP was compromised because its IV, initialization vector structure, allowed attackers to deduce the RC4 key stream by analyzing repeated patterns. Automated tools could crack WEP in a matter of minutes. Although WPA2 and WPA3 have since been introduced, older devices remain prime targets for hackers. Classical cipher broken headlines typically refer more to the weak implementation than the algorithm itself. Hackers focus on outdated protocols, short key lengths, or weak random data because 512-bit RSA or an RC4 cipher can be defeated swiftly if one knows what to do. In the mid-2010s, evidence mounted that SHA-1 was vulnerable to collision attacks. Hackers seized on this weakness in systems still using SHA-1 for digital signatures. Google's SHA-ATD project confirmed an actual SHA-1 collision, giving hackers more confidence in these attacks. As soon as they found any lingering SHA-1-based certificates or servers, they swooped in. The Bleikenbacher attack also demonstrated how PKCS11 padding could be exploited to reveal plaintext, decrypt TLS sessions, or forge RSA signatures. In short, hackers examine everything from padding and random seeds to older protocols, because anything could serve as an entry point. Large, complex systems inherently present more attack surfaces, often ensuring that hackers will find at least one exploitable weakness. By compromising just one vulnerability, hackers can jeopardize the entire system. For instance, if an attacker gains administrator privileges, it doesn't matter if an algorithm uses 4096-bit encryption, they can simply exfiltrate the key file. The encryption's theoretical security becomes meaningless. In reality, it's often in scenarios like these that classical cipher is broken, stories occur. Government-backed hacker groups apply this very same logic. Rather than attempt large-scale factoring, they seek simpler tactics, like one-line software bugs or bribing insiders, which could be both cheaper and more effective. Agencies like the NSA or GCHQ might try direct brute force assaults with supercomputers, while also monitoring for operational weaknesses, because hacking the easiest route is a universal hacker philosophy. In the 1980s or 1990s, brute forcing RSA required colossal resources, but now operational flaws are far more plentiful. Hackers use that knowledge, scanning for older servers or small companies with vulnerable systems. Once they manage to infiltrate, they pivot to bigger targets. During World War II, German forces believed their Enigma setup was safe, reasoning that even if the machine were penetrated once, it could not be cracked entirely. But the Allies discovered the repeated headings and human habits that provided vital clues. The outcome was that no matter how sophisticated a mechanism might be, lax operations usually let hackers succeed. The same principle applies today with RSA or ECC. Even if factoring large numbers is difficult, any oversight, be it random number generation or a side channel leak, opens a door. This is why we keep hearing that classical ciphers have been compromised. In many instances, it's more accurate to say the implementation or operations were compromised. Yet, once hackers reveal the plain text, it's indistinguishable from a full cipher breach. Hackers do not mind the public confusion that follows. For example, ransomware's success hinges on robust encryption like AES or RSA, which hackers use to lock users' files until a ransom is paid. Law enforcement faces immense challenges unless they possess the hacker's private key or other hidden data, effectively tilting the battlefield in the hacker's favor. This paradox showcases how hackers also exploit encryption to secure their own activities. Hence, classical cipher is broken can sound exaggerated, but if a user's documents are effectively taken hostage, the cipher is practically defeated. Mathematically, it may remain unbroken. Yet if hackers achieve their purpose anyway, we can still call it a failure of encryption. We can anticipate a similar pattern going forward. If large-scale quantum computing arrives, the factorization approach may become more direct, toppling RSA and ECC mathematically. Yet even before that happens, operational mistakes continue to be a much simpler road to success. In reality, many believe that hackers collectively hold the upper hand. Since just one success can cause catastrophic damage, security teams are always rushing to clean up while hackers celebrate. History shows us that classical ciphers have repeatedly been described as unbreakable until they're actually broken. Enigma was once deemed invincible, but eventually fell. RSA or ECC seemed impervious due to difficult math, but have faced real-world compromises through random number or implementation flaws. Vigenère was nicknamed impossible to decipher, yet was cracked by pattern analysis. In each era, hackers have used any opening, human, mechanical, or procedural. Inevitably, once they succeed, we say the cipher has fallen, and collectively move on. By understanding this background, one can better interpret reports of a new breach. If the result is that a cipher's plaintext is disclosed, it barely matters whether the theoretical math is still unbroken. In operational reality, the cipher is moot if hackers get what they want. Hackers' achievements come from exploring the entire system. Any single weakness, be it hardware, software, or a manager who reuses passwords, can give them a solid foothold. Thus, from Caesar's day up to RSA and ECC, There has never been a complete escape from hacker ingenuity. This cyclical pattern of breakthroughs and new defenses underlies the interplay of cryptography and hacking, past and present. Even as we contemplate the advent of quantum computing, the narrative remains largely the same. Hackers say, "We'll try direct math attacks if we can. If not, we'll find a simpler route." So far, that simpler route has usually worked, especially with side channels, certificate fraud, or older versions of SSL/TLS still in use somewhere. There's also a waiting game, collecting encrypted data to decrypt at a later time. Whether math-based or operational, one path eventually opens. The Enigma era taught us how repeated codes and human errors made the machine vulnerable. The RSA era taught us that random number slip-ups or side channels could undo otherwise solid schemes. ECC has faced ephemeral key mismanagement issues and other pitfalls. In all these examples, the deciding factor was rarely the pure math itself, but the environment built around it. Therefore, classical Cipher is broken has more often than not been a story of incomplete or flawed implementation, small oversights in usage, or single lines of buggy code. The result, however, is always the same. Once any one link fails, the chain breaks. Over centuries, hackers have thrived on precisely this principle and show no sign of stopping. Even if stronger keys and better algorithms appear, the cycle continues. Perhaps the best we can do is minimize the chances of these vulnerabilities, but we can't eliminate them entirely because humans build and run the systems. Hence, when you read that another classical cipher has been defeated, it's useful to remember that the math behind it may remain strong and unbroken in a purely theoretical sense. Often, the real culprit is a user error, an outdated protocol, a coding slip, or a stolen key. The final outcome, though, is the same. The data is compromised, and the headlines proclaim yet another triumph for hackers. Over time, cryptography keeps evolving, but so do hackers. In each generation, Caesar Ciphers, mechanical devices like Enigma, digital RSA or ECC, and even upcoming quantum-resistant methods, they always manage to exploit at least one gap. Thus, classical ciphers have never truly been safe from hackers, and that's likely to remain true in the future as well.